Who started the Great War in the Fallout games is a question that's been on every Fallout fan's mind since they stepped into this post-apocalyptic landscape. Now, a few notes before we start. Firstly, the image on screen is my video game Cowboys vs Monsters, a charming tower defense game with some PGE, which stands for Procedural Game Elements, available on Steam the 29th of July 2024, which is the start of Steam's Tower Defense Fest, funnily enough. Secondly, this talk has nothing, and I repeat, nothing to do with the TV show. And lastly, the point of this video is to talk with fellow Fallout fans about the game's interweaving narratives, so if you want to leave a comment, then feel free to do so. Let's start with who I think it is, and that's the Enclave. So who is the Enclave? The Enclave is the former US government, and by the government I don't necessarily just mean the people who were voted for, I also refer to the deep state, in other words, the people around politicians who lobby them, which is a fancy word for bribe, and advise them on matters. Now these people around the politicians that we refer to as the deep state, these are basically the heads of businesses, and it would be the banking world, but for the sake of Fallout and its lore, it's people who are in charge of Vault-Tec and Robco, so the likes of Mr. House and people like that. Now, all these different people can come together on certain issues, even though they've all necessarily got different opinions on how to go about things, or how, in this case, the world should be. And this is what this sort of meeting of this random enclave is. We have people who are into, I don't know, let's say for example, veganism. They don't want anyone eating meat, so that's their take on life, that humans should be wiped out, but let's save the animals, all that kind of stuff. This is obviously drawing from real life, because that's where Fallout draws all its themes and its ideas from. But this kind of experimentation of the vaults being used it's not really unique. It's how most governments, but in particular the Federalists of the United States, it's how they view their economy. It's how they implement different political strategies, if you will, or to put it in simple terms, it's to see what they can get away with. They treat certain states in a certain way and see if there's any kind of backlash, and if there is, then they roll it out to the rest. And that's what the vaults basically are. They're seeing what can we do to humans and how will they react, and by the information that they get, well, they can make the utopia that they dream of, whatever that might look like. So in amongst all this, we have technocrats, like we just said. Robert House, or Mr. House is called. He's from Fallout New Vegas. He's based on Howard Hughes, who was a massive businessman in the US. He's really interesting, but just getting back to the Fallout thing, he's a technocrat, and he has a certain worldview of the world. The hypocrisy of someone like him is he creates the environment, I should say, where he's necessary. So, depending on how much you know of the law, he creates Robco, and he makes these robots, which basically replace the working class. So you have this rampant inflation. I won't get into details, it bores people, but you have this rampant inflation, and then it's mixed with automation or automaton kind of house servants coming in play, but they replace all the working class jobs. You kind of read some of this in the later games where you go through the terminals, and basically it says just that. He's also kind of speeding up, whether he realizes it or not, this kind of atmosphere that the inevitable collapse of everything is, that it becomes Destiny Manifest. It decides that it's going to come into existence because it makes the situation possible. Now, it isn't just Mr. House's all the ideologies that could ever possibly take control. They all just have one common purpose, but it's what emerges after it. So one of the systems of governance could be described as eugenics. So eugenics is basically breeding an outcome that you want. So everybody was obsessed that a criminal must have something wrong with them, because why won't they do as they're told? And it's weird, but it was always ascribed to the Americans. That's what I can't even say his name because YouTube's so weird. The Austrian artist was inspired by the Americans at the time, but it goes back to basically the beginning of man. We always trace it back to ancient Greece. Everything's traced back to ancient Greece because nothing ever existed before them, apparently. they have this worldview that we could make the world so perfect if we just removed this rogue element, and you see that in the Brotherhood of Steel factions. Well, again, they've changed over time, but originally they were this kind of religious zealot military force that wanted to take out the impurities in the case of the super mutants. But that's just the theme of eugenics and how in around World War II that was a big talking point. It didn't, like I said, it didn't pop into existence then. It was just a talking point. Probably sold a few books. Then we have the artificial intelligence crowd. Now, these are roughly into two schools of people. There's the ones that think artificial intelligence is our next step in evolution, where the human mind should just become software because they're degenerates. And then there's the other side who think AI is there to be an assistant and give us this kind of utopian existence. Again, it doesn't matter how well-intentioned they are, they're misguided and ultimately like a destructive, degenerate force. But so in this, it sort of manifests itself early in the first Fallout 1s and Fallout 2. So I think it was Vax or Max. I think it was Vax was the name of the first AI, and it explains how, if my memory serves me, it started the war because it was bored or something like that. And then they copied that theme in Fallout 2 with Skynet, which was funny. It's a Terminator reference if you've ever seen that film. And it's the same kind of thing that the AI becomes self-aware and then it launches the nukes. But other than like pouring a human consciousness into a brain and then them taking over the universe, that was explored later on in Fallout 4, with the synths, the pouring of the human mind into some kind of fucking toaster. But the underpinning thing is this guidance of we need to transcend the human form. That's holding us back, and it's all of these. And I use the word degenerate because it's the best way to describe it. These degenerate ideas all come together. They make the environment polluted, if you can understand that. And then they go, well, we need to wipe the slate clean because it's everybody else. They're the problem. And that's why, realistically, it could only be the Enclave that started the war. Because it's made up of all those people who are all murderous and all have this intent to press reset and all start again. Now, I know some people will be like, oh, it was the Chinese, they dropped the bomb, X, Y, and Z points it to as being this. Well, you have to remember, there's a lot of counterintelligence going on, or as it's called now, misinformation, not just lies to the normal people, just lies being put around. As you know, any politician lies, that's their bread and butter. So no one's going to come out and say, yeah, we dropped all the nukes, we started the war, we wiped the slate clean, give us a chance, we're going to do it all again. Obviously, you just can't trust it to be on that. That's to say, that on the nose with the details of it. So people who say it was China, and I say China instead of communist, but that was always sort of bugged me in the Fallout, how they did the switch, because the Cold War and all the tensions around that was with Russia, and then this game swaps them out for the Chinese, which is super weird. But then when you look out who the majority of the communist leaders were, and you see why it was changed. But I don't really think it was the Chinese who launched, even if the writer said it was them. It doesn't fit the law, and we're to the point now where the game kind of writes itself. It's you've seen the TV show. I've not seen it, but I've heard people badmouth it, and I could guess it was going to be tripe before it came on. They can say whatever they want. It's not really the law. But that's just my rambling. So if you've got a different take, if you think it was the Chinese, or maybe you think it was the aliens, then let me know in the comments.